Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to stream 3, the first of our stream sessions for DHA 2021. Today, my name is Chris Thomson, and today we have a session that is about social computing with presentations on topics related to social media, online communities, and looking at a range of different social platforms. So the first talk of our session, I'm delighted to introduce Katya Krylova, who is a PhD candidate at the University of Canterbury, and she'll be speaking to us about animals on Instagram. The title of her paper is More Than Human Tongues, Talking Animals and Their Agencies in Technocultural Networks. So welcome, Katya.
Thank you. So my paper is called More Than Human Tongues, Talking Animals and Their Agencies in Technocultural Networks. Since March, I absorb and collect data from 50 public Instagram profiles featuring companion animals whose guardians make captions on behalf of their pets, as if it were their direct speech. So you may see here some examples. Those are mega influencers who has more than 1 million followers. So you can see that they're quite an influential beings. Such profiles mostly contain diary-style entries. They describe the lives of companion animals, present their personal reflections on daily experiences and their relationships with humans. Some pets also offer their opinions on ideas and events that are trending on social media. For example, elections, lockdowns, natural disasters, social justice campaigns. Among these accounts, we can find animals of different species, as you may see here, and even breeds. Many of them express symptoms of specific genetic conditions, such as Midas, a cat from Turkey with 4 ears, you can see it here, or Yogi, a cat from Netherlands whose whiskers tangled up around his mouth. There are many narratives created around the voiced pets, some of them represented as fashion icons, others as therapy animals, or even humans trapped in animal bodies. The most popular subject of their messages is love. They show affection for their subscribers and offer emotional support. And it actually works. The research conducted at the University of Hiroshima by psychophysiologists has shown that photographs of cute animals decrease stress levels and improve both mood and productivity, especially when the work requires extreme concentration. And there are other roles imposed upon pet influencers on Instagram, such as consumption drivers, substitutes of children, mediators of communication, even credibility enhancers, social justice advocates, charity fundraisers, and many others. Some voiced pets are so popular that they are invited to help humans in need. For example, to convince people under 40 to give blood, like Kobe did, because he's addressing younger generations on Instagram. He was invited to team up with the Vitaland and appeared in a video asking for blood, where his face expressions are edited by CGI technologies. I want to show it to you. It's super short.
Cats get a bad rap. You've heard we don't like you, even plot to kill you. I'm here to set the record straight. We're actually plotting to save you. Not enough people are giving blood, and giving saves 12,000 lives a day. So that time I peed in your shoes, I was telling you to give blood. And when I jumped on your face, I wanted you to give blood. And that time I coughed up a hairball and you stepped in it. Okay, that was just funny. But you get the picture. Give blood, save the humans. Visit vitalent.org.
Yeah, That is why we can talk about pet influencers as effective laborers. Their static and moving images are involved in process of producing and manipulating the effects in digital space. The mobilization of these charismatic creatures to promote various ideas online and first of all help us deal with stress exploits their ability to provoke positive effects, pleasant emotional experiences, lowering cortisol levels and stimulating the synthesis of oxytocin. And what is important here is that condition of being cute involves not just fluffiness and big eyes, but also vulnerability, clumsiness, and other qualities associated with children, which both influence the breeding techniques and like selective breeding practices, but also the representational patterns on Instagram. Many pet influencers on Instagram are represented as innocent children in need of extra care, and this pattern may actually lead to excessive care or even abusive treatment. It is especially evident in the profiles of animals previously stigmatized as defective. Their personalities often resemble Levinas's description of a human child as a pure vulnerability that has not yet learned to dissemble, to deceive, or to be insincere. Animals with genetic diseases like Monty here can be seen as promoters of tolerance towards the animals and even humans that historically were perceived as unable to lead normal lives. But in fact, they are often depicted as happy foster kids living their life to the fullest. And on Instagram, favoring optimistic content, their struggles are often downplayed. And such a practice aestheticizes helplessness and deformity caused by selective breeding. And in case of animals, it drags our attention away from the reasons behind their condition. Animals with extraordinary bodies or unusual markings, like human-like brows or shapes in the form of the heart, appear to be born for the gram. This trend started with Grumpy Cat, who is now deceased. Its dissatisfied face expression was caused by feline dwarfism, the result of the genetic mutations that lead to abnormal proportions of her body. Now many animals with various diseases are put to work as human proxies in the context of inclusion and diversity discourses. Yifu concept of playful domination partially explains why these vulnerable creatures create space for objectification online. In his study of aesthetic exploitation, he describes the process of making a pet as a specific form of dominance integrated with affection. According to Tuan, in contrast with violent domestication, producing victims, pet making aims to create playthings to care for and patronize. This leads to specific forms of abuse, often bound with genuine desire to protect the beloved pet and make it look more, beautiful and gain more feedback and love from people. In her critique of cuteness, Sien Gai points out that cute objects evoke the desire to belittle or diminish them further. We can see this on Instagram, where pets talk like children, misspelling words and making grammatical mistakes, while their bodies are being endowed with immature attributes such as clothes in childlike style, or they've been photographed next to cute toys and furniture. There are also visual filters turning animals into Disney-like characters. For example, this app, very popular in Japan, turning cats' ears into Mickey Mouse-like discs, or the app called Talking Animal that provides simple animation tools and the library of cute voices. In the attention economy of social media, the potential to produce affect makes cute pets very valuable asset. Through algorithms based on users' interests and feedback, Instagram targets content producers able to effectively channel our attention to platform and maximizes their profit. When algorithms curating profiles, visibility in the feed, recognize particular pets as effective attention miners, people managing these accounts tend to commercialize their success. and submit to constant publishing of these captivating images and cute or funny messages. At some point, this performance of pet influencers becomes exploitative of all parties involved, authors, audiences, and animals. I feel that researching some of the profiles that really productive in publishing. By encouraging the use of animals as effective laborers, promoting specific ideas and products, social media platforms cause some non-obvious negative effects. Among them, we can mention overproduction of pets and impulse buying or adoption that doesn't last. Also, overconsumption of unnecessary pet goods and services. As a result, some pet influencers are regularly dressed up for the Instagram and involved in other activities that can cause stress and discomfort. Also, they may suffer from treatment based on standards applied to human children, or abandonment in case if pet fails to succeed as a stress relieving tool or a prospective pet influencer. Cute appearance and vocabulary alone make these profiles an easy target for the critique, but in my research, I try to keep in mind that almost every phenomenon is ambivalent and contains the potential for interruption and subversion of negative effects. To detect these patterns that may cause positive impacts on the well-being of animals, I have chosen to look at voiced pets as a chimeric creature. It has incompatible body parts and sometimes several minds as a consequence of its multi-headedness. And despite the fact that this hybrid creature is curated by the same algorithms, it also an agent with distinct human-animal personalities. It combines the creativity of real pets, seen by their guardians, and their humans, so it may venture to go beyond conventional patterns of representation and resist negative impacts of digital capitalism. At the same time, we can see from this profile that many pet influencers try to maintain the specificity of content and its representation, including some specific intonations of speech and preferences in visual style. The patterns that resist objectification of pets are far less evident in the common flow of posts, but long-term observation and comparative data analysis allow us to detect them and start to think how their positive impacts can be extended. Monitoring pet profiles, I focus on the type of visual content, image mood, expressiveness and intonation of speech, message topics and their repeatability, use of cutified vocabularies, presence of anthropomorphic interpretations in the text, emphasis on animal subjectivity and its absence, and other parameters. And referring to Eric's profile here, I want to show that the correlations of these parameters show us how patterns of representation encouraged by commercial affordances of Instagram can be balanced. From the data I collected during several months, we can understand that Eric's guardian represents him as a fully developed non-human personality. She's balancing his cute appearance and frequently published cute images, which we can see here, cute close-ups, with the narcissistic and ironic styles of his speech. She also varied the topics of messages from emotional support to self-admiration and critique of human behaviors. She also focused on the daily chronicles of his life, and she describes different routines from bird watching in the garden to chasing his neighbor cat Trevor away. And she also keeping anthropomorphic interpretations of images below 30% and uses animal dialects less than in 20% of captions. And what is important is that she doesn't apply any misspelling or childlike speech patterns. It is also important to mention the emergence of specific profiles that combine cute appearance with not so cute words. For example, British short-haired cat from Antwerpen is very critical about humans. King Louis calls us peasants, and he's not appearing as our fosterling, but we are his servants. And statistically, the posts of where Louis expresses his affection towards his guardian or humans in general fall under 1%. Louis is also educating humans about his perceptual differences. For example, in one of the posts, he points out that not washing leggings during lockdown is upsetting because cats' sense of smell is heightened in comparison to humans.
I think we've just lost Katya there briefly. And I think as her paper is a short paper, we are close to time anyway. Hopefully, Katya, you'll be able to leave the call and re-enter. And, oh, there you are. Katya, would you like to wrap up your paper in 1 or 2 minutes?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to say in the conclusion that, of course, it is important that those animals drag our attention to honorable causes, but it's also important to, be mindful about how we use their images. And these profiles, these alternative profiles, show us how to, constrain manipulative potentials of cute appearance and what changes in the content have to appear in order to maintain the real diversity of pet influencers. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry we had that interruption. That was a very interesting talk. What we're going to do for the session is we're going to hold questions until the end. So please make a note of your questions for Katya, and we'll move on to the next, our other 2 papers, and then we'll have hopefully some time for questions at the end of the session. So now I'd like to welcome Angel Leelasorn and Kit Nelson, whose paper is entitled, Yes, I'm Up for This, DH Collaboration Through Shared Trauma, Memes and Gaming. Welcome to the session.
Good afternoon, Yumalindi, everyone. We'd like to first pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and recognise that we are speaking to you today from unceded, sovereign, Ngunnawal Ngambri country, upon which the Australian National University is built. Secondly, thanks for the opportunity to speak at this event, and special thanks to Drs. Katrina Grant and Terhi Nurmikko-Fuller for their mentorship and patience. My name is Kit Nelson, and this is Angel Leelasorn. We're both postgraduate students and survivors of the Centre for Digital Humanities Research, the ANU. The way this presentation is going to work is that I'm going to start, I'll go off on a tangent, I'll get distracted, and then Angel is going to step in and take over and do the second half. So where to begin? Well, I would like to explain the word I used before, survivors. We're both veterans of a course in the Centre for Digital Humanities Research, HUMN 8030 or 8031, Digital Humanities and Public Culture Special Research Project, a course where students get thrown in the deep end by picking a research topic of their own, planning out their project, executing it and completing a full research paper within a semester. This course is renowned amongst postgrads at the ANU for being intense, and in some cases, the conveners like to generate a sense of doom about the course. When I inquired about the workload, for instance, this semester, this was the reply. But the course usually offers weekly meetings to allow students to rant about their projects, ask questions, commiserate, and let some bonding occur throughout the intense workload. Little did we know that this year would be very different to previous ones. 3 weeks into this year's course, Canberra got locked down due to COVID-19. We couldn't leave our homes except for emergencies. Our projects had to be restricted to what we could realistically achieve under the circumstances, and those weekly meetings had to come to a very abrupt end. Based on our experiences of the previous year, where we didn't have the lockdown, we didn't have the lockdown during the second semester, but we did have it earlier in the year. Both lecturers and students all over the uni were dreading the known issues with online engagement. For instance, the inevitable academics shouting into a void of black Zoom screens and a desolate wasteland of university-based online learning platforms like ANU's Wattle and Microsoft Teams filled with disaffected, socially isolated cohorts. Online posts that nobody sees for weeks or responds to for weeks, and no one talking to anybody. This is a screenshot from one of Wattle's forums. That's the ANU's online learning platform, and you can see that it seems more like a standard email. There's no emotes, and it appears to be a top-down, ask the teacher, get an answer space. But another platform was made. Preceding the pandemic, the CDHR had forged a private Slack server, a closed network social media platform, and into this server, the CDHR had placed channels for enthusiasts, specific courses, fandom, and general interest, and the flexibility for yet more content, an alternative platform for student communication, which this year became the one platform to rule them all. The Slack channel had become known to many students at the CDHR, but through a casual understanding that Angel and I should probably sign up, we really unknowingly walked into a community which allowed us to be far more connected and social than we otherwise would have been this semester. As an app, Slack integrated into our everyday devices, our smartphones, our tablets, and our personal computers, as opposed to forcing us to check our emails for notifications for yet another platform. It supported quick messaging as the dominant form of communication, with support for images, emoji, and reactions. In resembling the social media we've taken to using regularly, it was familiar to us, and even though Angel and I were both new to the space, it allowed us to open up when it came to engaging. It had a real positive social affect to us. As well as having an online space exclusively for our course. In addition to the practical elements of the server, the CDHR Slack celebrates culture, gender, and neurodiverse collaboration. CDHR staff offer support through supervision, casual chats via channels, or direct messaging. The site has an informal and casual learning attitude, which really helps to reduce anxiety and stress around academic study, especially for postgrads and anybody considering doing any further research. The server also operates with an overall lack of judgment and operates as a safe space, not just for study, but for social interaction. What's more is that the interactions aren't solely driven by the conveners, but the interest, attitudes, and communication styles of the students. Channels appear out of community need. They can be created by lecturers or staff, or they can be created by students. And this relaxed atmosphere and the capability for social multimedia sharing on the server has encouraged really collaborative behavior, which Angel is now going to tell you a little bit more about.
Cool, thanks, Kit. So this is like one of our example channels. So that's basically created for specifically for this paper as well. And also one extremely crucial factor is humor and inside jokes. It's actually been known in various studies that humor actually helps reduce the power dynamics between lecture, teacher student dynamics, and bringing people together. And because we're really similar and also diverse in a way that we share, we can share stuff, and also in previous slides, there's lack of judgment. So we can just talk about our interests without anyone being oh, this is just stupid or something
there's no dismissing of ideology, because there's it's so diverse a field.
Yeah. So yeah, basically because mostly everyone would just like contribute to like, you know, sharing memes and stuff and sort of like joking, even like, you know, trolling like our lectures, which is like, you know, in a respectful way as well.
We're receiving trolling and heckling as we speak.
Yeah. And this one is like random fandom, so basically like dedicated to whatever we're like a fan of. Although like, you know, it's been known that all road leads to Skyrim, so it's like mostly like the topics would just like end up with Skyrim as well. So a lot of us would be playing Skyrim. And
oh yeah,
various other games, sort of like, you know, we're a bunch of gamers.
We are a huge bunch of gamers.
Yeah.
Yes,
And we would just like share, like even though like some other people might not have like played some other games, like we both play Horizon, and we just like, you know, try to like sort of convince other people to play as well. So it's basically like talk whatever you want.
Yeah, it's a huge gamers club, especially in random fandom.
Yeah. So like, you know, apart from like fun and games, you also like have like a channel dedicated to like particular courses as well. Like this one's for like the course that we did just last semester with the 8030 and 8031. So this is like basically one of our friends asking for help for like one of her projects. Like she needs some user feedback, so she just like went to us. So we talk about serious stuff too, but mostly it'll end up like in, you know, a more casual, joking way, like in one way or another.
Yeah.
So here's like some of the student observations about our Slack channel. So basically like, it's not like, you know, lecturer led, it's more like a free form community. So we can just talk whatever we want. We can be as serious or as casual. And like another student says, like, you know, what we have here far surpasses any other relationship students might have had in other courses, which I can definitely confirm that as well, that like, because I've done like, I've been at the uni for 7 years now, and I've done like multiple degrees here, and I definitely can confirm that my current degree with CDHR definitely, like I feel more connected to other people in CDHR, we, in my other degree, like at other schools, like they have like other ways to connect as well. But I feel like, especially during the lockdown, the Slack channel works really well. Like with me not having any, you know, fear of missing out or anything during the lockdown, which really, in a way, helps me, keeps my sanity during the degree.
It absolutely helped us.
Yeah. And
absolutely mad.
Like this particular one, so this is like from one of our international students. So she feels like she's just like listening to other lectures like through a screen, and like with like Slack, she's always like, you know, given opportunity to contribute and just like talk to peers and lecturers. And yeah, I can definitely confirm this as well, because I'm also like international, and I have like, you know, received like Asian like education before, and there's no way I feel like as comfortable talking to lecturers like as like, you know, if I talk to like Katrina or Terhi, for example, which I feel like really help. Like it opens up people and sort of like makes the lecture more approachable as well. Like because like we were like, you know, doing all these like inside jokes, banters, and humor sharing and stuff, which is and I feel like learning would come like regardless, because like, you know, it like the context still like set in like the university context, and you know, we don't actually really have to like directly focus on learning itself, because like, you know, the fact that we're students and lecturers and we sort of like casually talk, like opening up to each other, like we would still like, you know, come around to talking about, you know, academic stuff and learning in the end anyway. Because
the environment's really welcoming, it just allows us to go in and start and set the groundwork for really good collegiate work.
Exactly. So to sum things up, so building an online community requires flexible, user-friendly platform, which is like Slack is perfect for this, and Waddle is just like, it's awkward, and it's just like, I don't feel, like for me, I don't feel comfortable enough to sort of like be asking questions or like posting anything much on there, whereas like Slack is like, hey, I have a question, what do you guys think? I could just like jump on there and just ask. And also definitely it would need like members' individual effort, humor, and creativity, and sort of like create this like sort of like friendly, amicable space for everyone to sort of feel comfortable. And, you know, because of this openness, it fosters a really good like vibe with everyone, and definitely will encourage learning.
We like the vibe of the thing.
Definitely. So yeah, that's pretty much our paper in a nutshell. So thank you very much for having us today, and
We'll see you on Slack.
thank you.
Thank you, Angel and Kit. Thank you for that very interesting paper. Can I ask? I'm starting to see some questions appear in the chat, and that is great. If you have a question either about the last paper or about Katya's paper, or if you think of one during our next paper, please pop it into the chat, and that'll make it easier for us to get things in order and ask those questions, and hopefully have some discussion towards the end of the session. All right, now I would like to introduce Wanqi Leung, who is a lecturer in media and communications here at the University of Canterbury, and she's going to present her paper along with Giulio, Dalla, Riva, entitled Expressions about Social and Individual Responsibilities During COVID-19 in New Zealand, Sentiment Analysis of Tweets. Over to you, Wanqi.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so can you see my slides? Yes, thank you. Okay, kia ora everyone. My name is Wanqi Leung and I'm from Media and Communication. So today I'm going to present to you this paper, a project that I worked with Dr. Giulio, Dalla, Riva from Data Science. So this is a project, an interdisciplinary project between media and communication and data science. And obviously, as media and communication researchers, we are really interested in social media. So we are doing a lot of studies in social media, but we think it is particularly important to investigate social media during COVID because, well, obviously we all use social media. But during COVID, it has the potential to replace face-to-face interactions. So in the past, if you would like to share something, you might talk to your friends. But with lockdowns and physical distancing measures during COVID-19, you might turn to social media instead. So you might write something on social media. And that's why we think social media discourse really needs our investigation during COVID times. So we are located in New Zealand. So obviously we are interested in the COVID situation in the country. And we think it's very significant to do some research related to COVID in New Zealand. Obviously last year we were very successful fighting against COVID, where this year it might be a different story. But last year, I think, the world had really positive response toward New Zealand's reactions to the pandemic. So that's why in that study, we try to take a look at New Zealand people's expressions on Twitter related to COVID. And our focus is on attributions of responsibilities. So by attribution of responsibilities, we mean that people attribute COVID responses to certain parties. So we have two types of responsibilities. One type is social responsibilities. In this study, we define it as attributing the responsibilities for COVID responses to the government. So it's the government's actions to do something during the pandemic. The second type is individual responsibilities. So in this study, it means that, well, the Twitter users, they think that the people should do something during the pandemic. So in the past, there has been literature talking about how important attributions of responsibilities is, particularly in terms of health messages. So those people who are exposed to messages attributing to the responsibilities to individuals, well, their attitudes would be affected. So if people read a lot of messages on Twitter attributing responsibilities to a certain party, probably their attitudes or their behaviors might be influenced. So that's why we are interested in the attribution of responsibilities of these traits. So what we did was collecting data on Twitter. That's a geotag as originating from New Zealand. Well, that part was done by a data science research team, including Dr. Giulio, Riva, and we had a large amount of traits collected, then imported on a platform called Kibana. So that's an elastic search platform, which allows us to perform queries very easily. And in this particular study, we were looking at trees posted from the 24th of January in 2020. So that was the day when the Ministry of Health in New Zealand set up a team to monitor the COVID situation. So the government started to be aware of the pandemic, and we stopped on the 30th of August in 2020. So that was the time when Auckland moved back to alert level 2 after the lockdowns in alert level 4 and 3. So that was almost the end of our first wave of pandemic last year. So we ran the queries generating two data sets. So one is the social responsibility data sets. So we use keywords like the government or Jacinda Ardern or the ministry. And then the second data set is the individual responsibility data sets. So we use key terms like individuals, citizens, residents, people. And the two data sets, the size of the two data sets are quite comparable. So around 4,000 or 5,000 treats retrieved for each data set. And you can see some of the sample treats here. Well, for privacy reason, these treats are revised, so they are not the exact treats we retrieved, but you can get a rough idea what the treats are like in each data set. Okay, so here are the two word clouds showing some of the keywords in the two data sets. So obviously, the one on the left is from the social responsibility data set. So you can see the Prime Minister and Jacinda Ardern are really important terms. And the one on the right is the word cloud from the individual responsibility data sets. So you can see some of the terms where people, obviously, but also will. So a lot of these trees talking about people's free will and their reactions toward lockdown. Okay, and this is a general idea of how the trees are spread through the time frame. You can see obviously there are several times that we had more treats. Well, that was when we had lockdowns, when we had more community cases. So obviously people are more likely to write something about COVID on social media. And as I said, during lockdowns or physical distancing measures, people couldn't do a lot of face-to-face communications. So that's why they turned to social media instead. And if we run a time series analysis on that, well, as I said, obviously you can see some days when we had lockdowns and when we had more community cases of COVID. So we had more trees. But one interesting thing here is that you can see as the COVID situation evolved from January to August, well, actually people talk more about individual responsibility toward the later stage in this time period. So probably earlier in the pandemic, people would not talk about individual responsibility that much, but later on, they would think individual responsibilities become more and more important. So obviously, we did some data cleaning and text pre-processing, so some very standardized procedures for analysis of tweets, like removing some of the irrelevant characters, particularly for tweeters. So there are lots of URLs and ads. Unfortunately, we didn't investigate the URLs. We only focus on what people wrote on Twitter. So these two figures, they show the sentence length versus the number of sentences in each data set, where the left is from the social responsibility data sets and the right is from the individual responsibility data sets. And you can see actually there is a wider range of sentence length in the individual responsibility data sets. So for the social responsibility data sets, we actually saw a lot of recurring themes, and what people wrote were quite similar. But for individual responsibility, we could see a wide range of tweets and people with a lot of different opinions. So that can be shown with the sentence length as well. So yeah, the next step we did was some data annotation. So we tried to train the model with our annotated data. So that was done by me. And because I was doing it solely, so I actually worked on 2 rounds of annotations. So I did 1 round of annotations trying to annotate the traits into positive expressions and negative expressions, or neutral or irrelevant or undefined expressions. So 3 classes. And then I also did a second round to check the reliability using the Krippendorff's alpha. So this is a table showing some of the traits we annotated. So some of the examples of the positive, negative, and neutral traits. And you can see we had a Krippendorff's alpha after 2 rounds of annotations, around 0.8. Not perfect, but we believe it's enough to show that we had some kind of reliabilities. And once again, these traits are not exactly the same as what we retrieved for ethical reasons, but you can get a rough idea what positive and negative and neutral traits look like in each type of responsibility. So we train our model, and we also use the Testblock classification, which is a Python library for processing textual data. So it generated the subjectivity score and a polarity score, and that helped us to classify the traits we had retrieved. And after we run our model, so these are the two graphs with the two data sets. So the left one is from the social responsibility data set, and the right one is from the individual responsibility data set. So you can see, well, the x-axis is the polarity score, and the y-axis is the subjectivity score. So one thing you might have observed here is that you can see, once again, the individual responsibility data set is more diverse. So it's more polarized in terms of individual responsibility from the data sets we have retrieved. On the other hand, social responsibility data seem to be less diverse and less polarized. So some of the thoughts we have is that, as I said, you can see individual responsibility traits became more popular as we moved later in our pandemic. So particularly during the second lockdown, yeah, people had a lot of polarized opinion in terms of individual responsibility. And in that case, well, back to the literature I've talked about at the beginning, well, when people read these, when people read these treats, probably they might have very different ideas of individual responsibilities. And we all know the algorithms of social media that people might be exposed to a certain type of messages very often. So in that case, we can actually make the society more polarized with these traits. And regardless of subjectivity, these traits are polarized. So a lot of these traits we can see they can be very subjective. They can be some personal opinion. And instead of something like the social responsibility traits, that only the more subjective traits are polarized, while some more factual, less subjective traits in terms of individual responsibility can be very polarized as well. Well, that's the situation last year, and we haven't had a chance to look at what's happening this year. And obviously with vaccinations, probably we would see more individual responsibility traits on Twitter as well. So, well, we might need to do some further research as the situation evolved. And also, one of the limitations we have is that, well, the data sets, the Twitter data sets we collected on Kibana, it's for investigating COVID-19 disinformation and the outright movements. So some of the keywords used to search are related to these topics, so that we might not have covered everything, every tweet in New Zealand related to COVID. And obviously, the annotations were solely done by me. And even though I did 2 rounds of annotations, well, it would be great if we can have another person to generate the reliabilities. So these are the limitations, and some future research might help us investigate that topic better. Okay, so that's all I want to share with you today. Thanks a lot. If you have any questions, please let me know here, or feel free to email me.
Thank you. Thank you, Wanchi. That's wonderful. We'll now proceed into some questions for this session. So I want first to, so I'll invite questions via chat, or if you'd like, yeah, I think if you type your question into chat, that's the easiest way for us to do it. I'll ask Chris Lamb's question, which is for Katya first. And I think it's in the public chat. So Katya, you may have had a chance to read this question already. I'll just read it out though. Are there tensions within the pet influencer community? So people pushing against the predominant discourse of cuteness, or critiquing the reproduction of morphic deformities in pet breeds, essentially a kind of wokeness without systemic change. I guess I'm wondering, Chris asks, how recent pet influencers are and how much they've been co-opted and turned into PR type spaces for luxury pet goods.
Yeah, okay. I will answer in parts. So pet influencers are with us for almost a decade, since Grumpy Cat appeared in 2012. But massively, we may have witnessed this phenomenon during probably recent 5 years or even 3 years. I'm not a part of pet influencers' inner circle, but what I can say from their comments and posts is that they actually never engaged in the discourse about selective breeding impacts on animals' health or push against cuteness, because they actually, many of them earn money from cuteness. Partially, it has to do with the culture of Instagram that kind of encourages you to be positive and avoid some topics that may impact the whole influencers community in general. For example, some of them that prefer not to dress up their animals are being very gently explaining why their pet is not wearing a Halloween costume, but they never criticize others who are into costumes. The heavy critique sometimes and the comments about the necessity of systemic change come from subscribers, but it's very rare. And they actually drown in the flow of cute comments and hearts and other positive emojis. So basically, pet influencers argue for adoption and decent treatment of animals in need, including animals with diseases. That they do, but not posts about systemic change or anything like that. And that is why I think it's important for scholars to critically engage with this phenomenon. And regarding PR agencies and luxury goods, I know that some PR agencies are already, entertainment agencies are already sign up prospective pet influencers. But what I can say about community is that it started from the bottom. They co-opted with each other to team up for cross-promotional activities. They do it all the time, but strictly according to the inner hierarchy. Mega influencers with mega influencers, macro with micro, and so on, to be, a win-win situation for each other. That's what I witness now on Instagram. I hope I answered the questions.
Yeah, very interesting. Angel, would you like to ask your question to Wanchi?
Hi, I'm sorry, I was using Angel's computer to type. I just wanted to ask Bonchi, when you were doing your sentiment analysis, whether you were taking into account the nature of active and passive editorial voice. The example I typed up is like dog bites man, or man is bitten by a dog when looking at neutral tweets, and how that kind of how that the change of that editorial voice can imply critique or blame while simply stating facts, seeing as you're looking at how it can looking at how posts and retweets from the alt-right can be argued as simply stating facts.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Thanks for your question. We do take into account of how the statement was written on Twitter. So when we collected the data, we only searched the keywords. So the queries only included the keywords, and we did not care about how it was written. But when we annotated the tweets, we read the tweets and decide whether it is positive or neutral or negative. Yeah, so that's a human part of it. So we annotate it manually. So we read the tweets and make the decisions.
Easy. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions, verbal or written? Perhaps while you're thinking about that, yes, there is. Hunter, would you like to ask your question? Okay, I'll ask it for you. So, yeah, so Hunter's just asking Kit and Angel about Microsoft Teams. He's used that in a class last semester and discovered that some students engaged robustly while others almost never appeared. However, among the never engaged group, some were quite engaged in person. Did you find a similar thing with Slack?
So I'm much more an engaged person when it comes to being present physically. And just to let people know, we did use Teams. It's actually like we had to use a ANU approved network or Zoom equivalent or Teams. So we use Teams for our weekly meetups because it had to be approved by the university. And so we did engage there, but we found that the community didn't really sit there. It was using it as a platform to communicate at the time. But when we were at the end of each team, we'd say, "See you on Slack." We'll just shift the community. We'll shift the conversation over to Slack where it normally would reside. So we found that that's kind of where the fertilizer was. That's where we really found it was comfortable. And while we had some cases where people didn't have active cameras, or people didn't want to speak up as much, they were just as much accepted into that community. And whether you would wait for somebody to appear or wait to make sure that everybody had a particular sense or say in what was going on, regardless of whether it was in Teams or Slack, that culture seemed to come from Slack and the community that was built there. Yeah, thanks for the question.
I have a sort of a follow-up question to that, if I could.
Sure.
Well, not so much a follow-up as but about your experience with Slack. Did you get feedback from staff on kind of these kinds of interactions? because, you know, it seems like the kind of flow of social interaction that you're describing when things are really working, that's kind of an experience that staff are often aiming to create, either in a classroom or in an online equivalent. But there's always sort of issues with, you know, students want to have a space that's got some distance from their teachers sometimes. And some teachers may be sort of skeptical about, you know, being always on and available to participate in things. So what did you get any kind of feedback along, you know, from staff or in those kinds of areas?
I guess when it came to creating new spaces, all of our conveners knew that we would create new spaces, but we could also directly message each other. So Angela and I, we converse a lot because we're both 3D and virtual reality nuts. We like to work a lot on that space, and a lot of that will go like over the top of most of the rest of our cohort, or and to some degrees our teachers.
Yeah.
So we want to have a space where we can discuss that, and you know, occasionally somebody will come in and go, "Oh, what the hell are you guys talking about?" And we're happy to discuss it. It's kind of in that community, we have spaces where we can go if we want to talk privately. We have spaces where we can go if we want to have a general discussion that's open and social, where anybody can join. And then the culture is that wherever we go, if there's somebody that's coming in, we're not just going to dismiss them. We're not just going to say, that's a stupid question, this is only here for us. It's really accepting. And that's, I think that was initially fostered by our conveners, but it's been adopted by all of us as there's sort of more of a Montessori aspect to it, in the sense that you learn from your peers, and the students are able to communicate back and feedback. So in answer more to your direct question about, you know, how to know whether it's working and the staff feedback. I mean, there hasn't been as much heckling as I told you about initially when we were speaking. We get a lot of positive feedback from them, and yeah, Terhi's just posted.
In the chat. Yeah,
she's actually just posted a response. So if you want to staff feedback, that's probably the best thing you can get.
Yeah, and also, like, what would you call it? It's like non-asynchronous. Is that like synchronous? No, wait, asynchronous.
Asynchronous.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
So it's like asynchronous. And it's sort of like there's no like really like an urgency to just like, hey, you need to reply to me now, kind of thing. Like it's sort of like, okay, I'll just like send a message like in the public channel, or like, you know,
a private message.
Yeah, DM them and just like wait for whenever like they like, you know.
And if we had any serious academic concerns, we could always write an email like we would to any university lecturer if we needed an extension or anything like that. That's because there's a valid reason why you would want to have that as a written copy, and not just a post on a closed social network.
Yeah, great, thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.
Are there other, and I see we're getting some further feedback in the chat, which is great.
Thanks. Thanks.
Solidarity.
Thank you for backing up our presenters with supporting testimony. So we have a little more time. Are there more questions that anyone is waiting to ask? Oh, that's nice. It's a sign of very supportive lecturers that they turn up to your presentation and support co-authorship and turn up and then praise you in the comments. That's great.
Yeah, we got each other's back.
Yeah,
basically.
We're our own fan club.
Yeah, like whenever like, you know, some other people like in CHR like got like some presentation, we just like flop there and like, you know, give them more support and stuff.
Easy.
Great.
Cheers.
Okay, I just want to give an opportunity for anyone who's sitting on a question if they would like to ask one. Okay, Katrina, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I can ask it. Yeah, no, I had a question for Katya about methodology, actually, because I know we've had some people in the centre work on Instagram, and there's been a bit of a challenge around getting the data offered, and I think it's got no public API. So did you just have to sort of search hashtags manually and take screenshots and compile your data that way?
Actually, I do, and there is no help from hashtags because I'm researching talking animals, and there are no hashtags that they're actually talking. So I created some kind of database where I collect data and where I can index it at the same time. So the main limitations are the scope of the research. So I can follow just 50 accounts that I carefully, selected from the whole flow. And also my indexes can be kind of subjective because I'm analyzing content from the position of a critical animal studies scholar. So this is how it is, but there are some interesting positive and negative patterns that I may see. So I kind of try to balance the critique with the search of the way to make this practice less harmful, but still it's not going anywhere. So we need to work in that direction as well. So yeah.
Great. Okay. All right. Thank you to our speakers for 3 very interesting papers. Thank you to those of you who've submitted questions. It's been a really interesting session. I would love to ask more questions and continue on, but I think now is probably a good time to start wrapping up the session. I would just like to highlight that we have social hour at 6 p.m. So there's the newcomers session. It's on the conference program. It'll be hosted by Dave Chicarico and DH at Otago people. So I encourage anyone who's keen to find out more about DH and the link is in the chat now. So anyone who'd like to join that session, that'll be a fun social opportunity to kind of get to know a few more people and hear a bit more about DH things going on in Australia and New Zealand. I'd also like to thank Lauren and Jeff who've been doing tech and admin support for this session, and I think that's everything. So thanks very much, everyone, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow's sessions and see some of you at those. All right. Thanks very much.